Hello everyone! The summer update is finally here, and not only do we have all of the beautiful swimsuit units coming along with it, we have a ton of quality of life updates from, when the summer event came on JP, but also a bunch of first anniversary quality of life updates as well. They made this a really, really large patch, and there is just a ton to go over. Also, for all of you that actually play on your phones in public, I'm sorry, but you may have to be a bit more discreet for the next 40 days. It is what it is. Characters look nice. Of course, you can switch the home screen back to the normal one if you don't want to see the swimsuits all the time, but it is what it is. Anyways, let's get into the update info first. I'm going to go through all this stuff and just tell you what's good, what's bad, what everything is. So we do have a changelog right here for the patch notes. First up, we have the guide mission update. This is for new players, mostly for new accounts, so most of you probably won't care about this. New accounts will have better starter missions for, a smoother, more simplified progress through the game. I don't really know much about this, and there will be better rewards like Atelier tickets and stuff. For anyone that's, on an endgame account that doesn't really care about this, all of the new rewards like the Atelier tickets and all that other good stuff are in your mail. So you have a lot of mail to collect right now, but all the new rewards are in the mail, so you get all that stuff basically for doing nothing. It's pretty good. On top of that, we have adjustments to material drops. So basically what this is, dungeons are being discontinued in December. They're also being discontinued in December on JP. So I'm actually surprised they're doing it in December on Global instead of like in February or something. But yeah, dungeons are being removed. So what they did is they moved all of the materials from dungeons into score battles. So now your score battles give you way more materials. You don't have to worry about material RNG from dungeons. Very, very nice update for stamina efficiency. You just get way more materials from score battles. It's pretty crazy. Also, the rank XP rewards from clearing dungeons, like rank 10 dungeons, have been moved to story missions. So you might notice that there is like there's like 300 rank XP in your missions right now. It's because of that. So that is the reason why. And they'll be replacing dungeons with something else. We don't know what yet. This change hasn't even happened on JP yet, right? Dungeons have not been removed yet on JP, so we don't know what they're being replaced with. We'll find out in December, I guess. So that's cool. However, you may want to consider clearing all the dungeons before December. You have about 2 months to do that, because the gem rewards from dungeons are not being compensated for, as far as I know. So any dungeons left uncleared when December comes, you're not getting those gems, right? So you may want to work on clearing those. Thankfully, some of the summer units might really help with that, depending on what else is in your box. So, pretty cool. We have the party equipment setup update. This is probably the biggest feature, the best feature they've ever added to the game. I will go over this more in depth in a bit and actually show you what this is about, along with the equipment set feature. I don't really use this much personally, but it's kind of nice. But basically a lot of changes to the way you set up your parties to make everything just so much more convenient. Then we also have some improvements to the conversion screen where you feed Izana all of your crap items from synthesis and she gives you shiny coins. Yeah, we have improvements to that. It's kind of nice. It's not the best update. I wish they would have allowed us to auto select more than 50 items at a time, but you can filter by max trait level, which is pretty good, and some other things, so pretty nice. We have improvements to the recipe book. It looks really nice. We have so many recipes now that the old recipe book was getting really annoying to use. The new one is much nicer. I like it a lot. I'll go over that as well. We have improvements to the emblem screen where you can see progress on each of your emblems. That's really nice. We have improvements in quotes to the shop screen. I don't actually like what they did to the shop screen, so I'll go over that too. We get illustrator names on memoria, which is awesome. Before, we kind of just had to hope they posted the memoria on their own Twitter to know who drew each memoria, or just kind of guess. But because of this, now we know. It's good to credit your artists, so yeah, really happy about this change. Adjustment to training research. I don't really know what this means. Tickets, you can now get 100,000 tickets for like event tickets instead of 10,000. This is important because the summer event gives you like 80,000 tickets for its first part. We can stockpile up to 20 mana now instead of 10, so you don't need to log in twice a day to use all your mana anymore. And we have new mana recovery items, so we have bottled mana and mana fragments. These are great. A lot of the content in the game that rewards mana, like EXs and stuff, before it rewarded mana that you just had to use. Now it gives you bottled mana, which is basically like cookies. So it gives you mana in this form where you can just recover it whenever you want, so you don't have to worry about overcapping when you collect all your mana. That's really awesome. Some content will give this in the form of fragments, which is basically just time limited, so it's the equivalent of chocolate cookies. But yeah, very good change. And let's go through all of the rest of them because that I need to like show off because they're pretty cool. First up, we're gonna go to the shop. You can see that the shop has way fewer tabs on the left here. So you have recommended, which is basically the things that you can pay money for. That's basically what it is. They're not wrong that the daily pass should be recommended probably, but like, yeah, this is the things you can pay money for. Then we have chapters, which once again is all the chapter passes. It's whatever. We have the limited time section, which is basically all of your bundles. This is where tickets go. This is where all of the paid bundles, like the limited bundles and stuff go. Pretty normal. And then we have exchange, which is basically every other tab put into one. And I hate this. This is like annoying UI. We have the daily section, which is where you spend your shiny coins. We have the monthly section. They just threw everything in here, including all of this like stuff for gems that no one ever buys. They should just remove these, honestly. No one's buying experience candy for 100 gems, right? Like, it's very, very silly. But this is where like your monthly mana goes, and your key of memories, your sacred orb, your elixir of return, and also there's like multiple different currencies mixed in here. It's just awkward to look at because we have coal, we have shiny coins. Yeah, it's weird. The spark of memories goes in here. We have two of them now. We got another one in the mail, so you know, if you still need more of these characters, you can use these. I can technically use both of mine now to finish off Oscar and Odelia if I wanted. Then memory fragments here to buy your memory crystals. And then the brilliant wishing stones go here, and the spark shop is all the way at the end here, which I think is very weird. I don't know why they decided to move the spark shop from over here to over here, all the way back over here, like kind of in a weird spot, right? But that's the new layout of the shop. Next I'll go over the recipe book, I suppose. The first thing you'll notice immediately is that it's just a long list of items now, which is much nicer to sort through, especially because it puts the new ones right at the top. This is great for me. It's easier for me to show you new recipes during updates and stuff. It's awesome. And a big thing is that you can see these recipes even without unlocking the content, which is really nice. So you can also sort by recipes you don't have yet. Obviously, I don't really play my global account all that much, so I'm still missing a lot of recipes. You can go to story recipes. It'll, you know, sort them by chapter. You can go to tower recipes. They're all sorted by tower now. You can go to event recipes. Very, very nice layout. And up here, you know, you see all the banners. You can see how much you have for each. So like 0 out of 10 for tower, ice tower, or like 7 out of 10 for bolt. And then all the event recipes as well with the nice little event banners. And you can also, we have a take all button for the rewards, which is really great. So love that. The recipe book update is a huge win. Very, very happy about it. I hope you all enjoy this as well. And I guess we can go look at the emblem change now. The emblem change is very cool. You can just see your progress here, so you know how close you are and everything. Like, whoops, accidentally pressed attempt. Yeah, for like spending 300,000 stamina, you can see how despair it is, how far away you are. I'm only at 80,000, wow. So, very cool for all of you emblem collectors out there. Yeah, very nice update. one thing that's kind of nice about this Puni update, you'll probably get like 10,000 Puni kills during the summer event just from the event dungeons, so that's kind of nice. Yeah, very cool. And last but definitely not least are the equipment changes for party. So first up, you are not limited. So within a single party, you're limited to equipping the same item multiple times, but just for your characters, you can equip the same items on all of your characters if you want. So I can go here to Izana. This is the gear she has equipped, that memoria, and I can go put that memoria on someone else, like Christmas Resna, and it's not going to unequip it from Izana, right? Izana will still have that memoria equipped. But if you try to put them in the same party at the same time, then it will unequip it. But only for the party. It'll still be equipped to the character, if that makes sense. So you can reuse your gear over and over again for various characters without having to like change equipment around. So that is very, very, very nice. And then whatever gear you put on the character here will be their gear when you put them in a party. That's pretty self-explanatory. It'll just remove if there's any like conflicts for duplicate gear, right? So, making a party. Our equip screen is now here. You can see all the characters' equipment here, and you can change it from here. It is a very, very nice overview of equipment. But you can see here that like if I swap Izana for Christmas Resna, like I said before, Christmas Resna will have the same gear equipped without memoria. However, if I have Izana in the party and then try to put Christmas Resna in, duplicate equipment has been removed. So Resna will no longer have that memoria, and I will have to give her a different one. And then yeah, any character that you put in here will retain the equipment that they already had. So your characters come into the party already equipped. And if you change their equipment here, it will not change what's equipped to the character itself, right? So if I have Izana here, I change her equipment to like just random stuff. It'll only be changed for this party. So put random equipment on her, save the changes. It'll be changed for this specific party. However, if I go to another party, like this one, you know, she still has her other equipment on. So equipment is now per party, right? That's the main thing. It is per party. Really nice change. So any changes you make in one party will not break your setup in another party anymore, which is amazing. So you can now just keep your, you know, your main content setup in one party, and anything you do for like tower or Roman tournament or whatever in a different party isn't going to break your main setup. You don't have to redo things every single time you want to use a different party. It's really, really, really nice. This change is fantastic. This is what we've been asking for since day one. Really important, and just really awesome in general. And of course, the equipment changes here won't reflect the equipment changes on the base character. So if I were to take Izana out of this party and add her back in, she will have her normal equipment again. So pretty cool. And then also there is this feature to save equipment sets. I don't really use this much personally because the way the feature already works is good enough for me. But if you do want to save specific sets that you can swap around for specific characters, like say you want a faster Izana, you could, you know, give her a faster accessory. Then you go in here and you can overwrite this as an equipment preset, change its name, Izana Fast. And, you know, if you ever want to re-equip that gear setup, but you don't remember what it was, you know, like this is her base gear setup, but you wanted to equip the speedier version, you just go in here, equip, it's done. Obviously you can do that for like entire setup changes or whatever. I don't really use it too much, but it's pretty nice. But yeah, that is the new equipment screen. It is absolutely fantastic. Use it, learn how to use it. It's a little bit awkward at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's obviously much better because it's not going to be breaking your parties all over the place. Having equipment tied specifically to a party is just very, very, very nice. So very happy about that. And yeah, let's go on to the event. So event info. The event is different this time. The main thing about this event is currently it is time gated. We do not get event tickets from spending stamina. Okay, we just don't. We get our event tickets from the beach house, which has a level, and you can see what you get. You get these over time. It is completely time gated. So every couple minutes you'll be able to obtain more tickets or whatever from the beach level. You level it up by collecting materials. You get these materials from the score battle and from the story. So you do the score battle, you get the materials. The first set of materials requires, I think, like 190 tickets to get it to level 3 or something. But maybe story gives a few more. I haven't gone through it yet. I don't remember. But basically it's time gated. You will be time gated for a little while. But I wouldn't worry about it too much. You don't need to be like perfectly efficient. As you level it up more, the rate of tickets goes up very, very, very fast. And basically what's going to happen is you will get this to the max level within a few days. And by the end of the event, you will have like 80,000 of these tickets. Like literally like 80,000 of these tickets is about how many I had on JP. Don't worry about it at all. You don't really need to be efficient here. Just take it at your own pace. Make sure to get it leveled up. That is totally fine. Yeah, that's just how it is. There's a lot of other things to explore, and this will get expanded with the next part of the event. You know, so part 2 will add some more things, part 3 will add some more things, and then there is a 4th part of the event as well, which adds its own set of tickets. Starting with part 3, you will be able to get tickets with stamina. That is, and then starting with part 4, there's another set of tickets that comes from stamina. So right now we have double drops on everything. If you're wanting to use cookies, I recommend saving them until part 4 of the event. That is probably when you should be using your cookies. However, I know a lot of people are going to have a number of cookies that expire this month, these 10-day cookies. I have 71 of them. Obviously, you want to use these before they expire, but these like 40-day cookies, use them during part 4 of the event, right? So that is the best time to use cookies, and I will talk about that more when it actually comes out. But we have not had a more efficient time to use cookies than part 4 of summer up till now in JP, so it is a good spot to dump all of your cookies, but not yet. Hold off on them unless the cookies are literally expiring in 10 days, right? So yeah, let's get to what everyone's been waiting for, the banner. There's a lot to cover in this update, so it's taken a little while. First, we'll go over the memoria selector. So this is exactly the same, you know, exactly the same like payment scheme as a character selector. However, this one's memoria. Give me 1 second. It's early morning, so all of this talking is like drying out my throat. Anyways, yeah, this is exactly the same as a character selector in terms of payment scheme, but it is for memoria. You can see the selectable memoria here. One thing that's kind of awkward is because we got Halloween late, the Halloween memoria is not in here. On JP, we were able to select the Halloween memoria, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. There are still good memoria in here to select. Now, you can select up to 2, and you can get memoria that you already have, right? So that can be good for getting extra ranks on the memoria. One thing I don't recommend selecting is memoria that give crit damage to specific attributes. So we have air crit damage, We have like this one, we have strike crit damage here, we have ice crit damage here. I don't recommend selecting these at all, because in part 4 of Summer, we get a better crit damage memoria that's generic and applies to all attackers. So I don't recommend selecting these. My recommendation for this memoria selector is going to be purely supporter memoria, right? So there's a few options. In my opinion, the best option, especially for Roman tournament, but kind of just in general, but mostly for Roman tournament, and honestly, if you don't care about Roman tournament rankings, in my opinion, the memoria selector isn't really worth the value. I personally did not buy it on JP. I'm not buying it on Global either. So, you know, your money, you can do what you want with it. My recommendation is going to be feature worth fighting for, the Fish Memoria, which gives critical damage to all allies when it comes to supporter. This of course scales with buffet, so it ends up being 70% with max buffet and even more with more buff effect. Very, very strong memoria, and it's going to be the best memoria in general for Roman tournament in the future, and that is because Masterpiece, basically its equivalent for skill damage, wherever that is, this one, isn't particularly good on the Awakened Resna team, because that team has a ton of skill damage, so this one kind of falls off. For general content, I would say Masterpiece is the better memoria though for most teams than the fish one. The crit one, I would say this one is better. So if you don't care too much about tournament, Masterpiece is going to be a lot nicer, especially because it doesn't require being equipped to a supporter. The other, you know, high value memoria in here, we have Welcome to the Party, which is going to be the best memoria for Saskia in the future. Welcome to a character with Ice Affinity, boost skill damage by 20% for all allies. This will also be the best, I believe this is the best memoria for Ice Claudia on the Ryza Initiative team, which is also really nice. I'll talk more about that later, because she absolutely needs an 11% memoria. This one's quite good for Ice characters, so that's a very good one to get. Then we have this one, which is 11% speed with supporter burst skill damage. You would only really get this, in my opinion, for Roman tournament, and it's not particularly good on the Awakened Resna team because she doesn't burst for her damage, so I don't really recommend this one. And last but not least is Time to Study. However, I wouldn't really select Time to Study. I just hope to get it off of Atelier Fest tickets and stuff, and hopefully a lot of you already have a few copies of this. It also comes in other like free memoria selectors and stuff. I wouldn't bother selecting it, but it is still of course very good. But yeah, those are the main options. If I were personally going to buy this, I would probably just select this one twice, the Fish Memoria twice. However, a copy of Welcome to the Party is also good. There's definitely good options here, so that's what I would keep in mind. Just, I would not get crit damage memoria because you're better off going for the summer memoria. Alright, and next up we have the actual summer banner. So first up we have Ryza and Resna for this first banner. This is part 1. Part 2 will be Val, so single character banner. Part 3 will be Claudia, and part 4 will be the Summer Memoria, which I will talk about a bit later. But yeah, for now, we have this banner. Let's go ahead and go through all of the units, starting with the Memoria. First up, we have this Memoria of Totri and Mimi, and it's Bolt Stun, so 6% speed, 31% magic attack, stun damage for Bolt characters. We should all know this by now. Bolt Memoria are not particularly worth going for, or sorry, Stun Memoria are not particularly worth going for, so yeah, it is what it is. Trash Memoria. And then we have this one, which is Ice weak point damage up on an 11% speed Memoria. Boost skill damage by 65% when attacking a weakness, while equipped to a character with Ice Affinity. This is kind of nice because 65% is kind of high, but usually this isn't going to be better than a crit damage Memoria. When it comes to attacker Memoria in general, we have the best attacker memoria coming in like 3 weeks. So every other attacker memoria kind of just pales in comparison, making them kind of not worth pulling for, right? It is nice that it's a pretty decent memoria with 11% speed, but in a lot of cases you actually want your attackers to be slower so that they can go 5th in your party setup. So 11% speed on attackers is very often going to be a detriment. Not always, of course, but very often going to be a detriment. So this memoria is just kind of mediocre, but it is pretty cute. Nice Izana with her shorts. But yeah, so the memoria on this banner, not really worth it. I wouldn't recommend getting these. They're just not particularly good. But for the characters, first up, let's start up with Resna, who to me is really, really cute. I love her outfit, and also really, really disappointing. There is a lot to cover in this kit. She is a bolt breaker, she is an area breaker, and there's some weird things. So first up, we're going to look at her passive from Misfortune to Fortune, and what this does is it changes all weakened type panels on the timeline to straw hat panels. Weakened type panels are the red panels, so any red panel gets converted into a straw hat. And she also has a special effect where if she lands on one of these straw hat panels, she can use her burst skill from them. So that's pretty cool, right? That sounds pretty good. All red panels are turned into a different type of panel, and Resna can burst whenever she lands on one of these special panels. What do the special panels do? They give critical rate and skill damage, I believe, to your team when they land on them, and for enemies they act as normal red panels. So they basically turn, it's pure upside, right? All red panels become buff panels for your team, they still act as red panels on the enemy, and Resna can burst on them. That's pretty cool. That's really awesome. Red panels suck. However, there's a few things that make this not really as good as it sounds. First up, it only works on natural red panels, so you cannot create a red panel and have it turn into a straw hat. So with characters like Slash Totri or the upcoming Saskia, which are characters that create red panels, those red panels are still going to be red panels after they're created. Those don't become straw hat panels. If any enemies, like ghosts, often turn blue panels into red panels, those are just going to be red panels. They're not going to be converted into the straw hat panels. So it only works with natural red panels. And another thing going against this skill is there has been a bit of a shift in the timeline design philosophy starting with this event. And basically from this event forward, pretty much all new content doesn't spawn any panels of any type until like turn 8 or 9. It's actually ridiculous. So what's going to happen is for most content created from now to the future, to like current content on JP, for most content, this passive does literally nothing. It's still going to be pretty solid in like the current Affinity Tower floors, of course, because those are older content. And I don't know if the devs just got lazy with making timelines or what, but basically, yeah, from now on, most content, this passive is going to do basically nothing until the battle is over, because panels start spawning really, really late. There's like no early panels anymore. It's super weird. And yeah, it's just really awkward. On top of that, for Resna specifically, being able to activate her burst from a straw hat panel isn't particularly an upside. In fact, in many cases, her burst is going to be worse than her skill 2, depending on how you gear her, and I'll talk about that more when I go over the skills. But anyways, this really awesome sounding passive that sounds really good in theory just ends up being kind of useless in practice for most content. It's really annoying. Anyways, I wish it was better. It sounds so much better than it actually is. Like, for a lot of content, just removing red panels completely is a really good passive, but when the red panels don't exist anymore, like, doesn't matter, right? But yeah. And then her other passive, Summer Magic, when attack target is stunned, boosts allies magic attack by 20% for 1 turn. Obviously, this is a good buff, but it requires stunning a target, and this is very, very, very difficult. So I would basically write this off as not a passive in most situations. But yeah. not a passive for the most part, because you're usually not breaking things, even with new breakers, right? It's so awkward. When you are breaking things, obviously it's a good buff when you're stunning things, so, you know, when you do actually stun something, it's really nice, but a lot of the time Resna's not going to be able to stun anything, and that is because her burst, along with her skill 2, are both AoE. So while AoE breakers were good in the past, nowadays when enemies get 600 to 1000, sometimes even 2000 stun gauge, even an area burst isn't going to be breaking anything, even the smallest enemies. So if her burst was single target, it would probably be a lot better. You would probably actually be able to stun things, but because it's AoE, even her burst makes it really, it's really difficult to stun things with her burst, which is why her bursting just isn't really that important. But on top of that, there's something really, really awkward about her kit. So her skill 2 and her burst, like most breakers nowadays, they apply debuffs and give party buffs. However, the debuffs they apply are completely different. So her skill 2, area, attack, and before attacking, it reduces the target's bolt resistance by 25% for 2 attacks, and after attacking, it boosts the target's critical damage received by 35% for 1 attack. And then her burst is completely different. It boosts the target's magic attack damage received by 30%, which is a very small value for a burst, by the way. It should be like 50%. And also, when she stuns a target, which you just went over, probably isn't going to happen in, current new content, she'll boost the magic attack of the ally with the highest magic attack by 50% for 1 turn. So both of these skills sound pretty decent. We have breakers with this kind of setup before, however there is a problem here, and that is her gear. So we do have a new trait, which is Enhance Resistance Down Bolt, which will scale the efficacy of bolt resistance debuffs. And so if you're stacking that trait on her for her skill 2, so that she's reducing bolt resistance by like 50% instead, it means that her burst isn't getting any benefit from those traits, and vice versa. If you're stacking physical magic resist, scaling traits for her burst, then her skill 2 isn't getting any benefit from the traits because it doesn't have that debuff. So no matter what, and you can't get both of those traits on the same item. So no matter what, whichever way you gear her, you're gearing for either her skill 2 to be scaled or her burst to be scaled. And, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to scale her skill 2 and not her burst. So what ends up happening is that even if she can burst, the burst isn't going to be stunning anything anyways, and it will be supplying less damage to your team when you use it, because you're probably going to give her the bolt resistance trait and scale her skill 2. So the burst is basically completely useless in like 99% of scenarios. So her being able to burst from a red panel, it just doesn't matter at all. And that's basically, yeah. Resna's kit, really weird, really awkward. But like, I can't call her a bad character just because I absolutely loathe her kit design. In the past, when I first saw it, I was a fan of her kit design, but after actually playing with her and seeing how it works a lot and realizing like these weird inconsistencies, like I loathe her design. Her skills are inconsistent with each other. A lot of the things don't matter. A lot of the game design kind of goes against her, and she just ends up being a super weirdly disappointing unit. But that doesn't mean she's not powerful, right? If she can be hard to fit into a team, but if your main attacker is still Izana, this bolt resistance debuff is quite strong, especially when scaled with the traits, so it's reducing bolt resistance by like 50%, right? Minus 50% bolt res is pretty big. However, if you're using, Dark Waters or Blitz Cores with a bunch of bolt curse on them, it is still like a fairly mediocre debuff. It's a good debuff. It's a really good debuff. However, you should probably be using, for your like Izana sweeper setup, you should probably be using items with Bolt Curse on them, and then use other supports instead with harder to get, damage categories, right? If that makes sense. So Dark Water with Bolt Curse, Blitzcore with Bolt Curse are basically good enough to kind of make Resna not super strong, but if you don't have other options for debuffs for Izana, she's still very good. Like 50% bolt res and like 40% increased critical damage from her skill 2 is very strong, honestly. It's very strong. Like, she will absolutely be pretty decent in an Izana team if you don't have other characters like Ons and Claudia and Wilbel and Air Totri and Lydia and whatever, like filling up the team space. Like, Resna will work, absolutely. But if you do already have like a perfect Izana team, I wouldn't really pull for Resna for the Izana team. Obviously, she's super cute. I would pull her because she's super cute. I did on JP, but I just haven't used her that much. But yeah, she is solid. Obviously, she's very bolt focused. You're not going to use her on a non-bolt team. She's solid. She's not amazing, but she will absolutely work in a bolt focused team like Izana. Yeah. And on top of that, she has stun damage boost as a gift. This doesn't really matter. And her leader skill is 75% burst skill damage and burst skill stun damage for seasonal characters. So it's a pretty decent leader skill if you're using, say, like Christmas Resna, but of course, as a character, she doesn't really synergize with any of the seasonal units because none of them are bolt attackers. So, like, yeah, her leader skill is just not very good, just based on the units. It will be good for, I believe, Swimsuit Val. She will be a seasonal bolt attacker with the next banner, but I don't remember if Swimsuit Val has a better leader skill already. So, yeah. But yeah, that's Resna. She's solidly like B to low A tier, I would say, as a breaker. Like, the debuff is good, but yeah, she ends up just being okay due to the constraints of the game design and meta and whatever, and her kit just being weirdly inconsistent. But that's fine. Now we're going to go over the much better unit, kind of the winner of the banner, who is Ryza. And Ryza is yet another ice attacker that no one asked for. She's like our 6th one or something, right? But she's honestly pretty good. And I'll go over why later. She has a specific niche that you kind of need to be aware of when pulling her. She is good on her own, but she requires a very specific team to really shine, and I'll go over that once we go over all of her skills and stuff. So she is an ice attacker, and she is an area attacker. She has an area skill too, which is pretty nice. Its damage rate is fine, and she has this new skill lamp mechanic. So they call them charge indicators apparently, so that's interesting. They're called skill lamps in JP. So basically, we have, the skill has a lot of text, but basically she has these 2 charges on the skill. You can see them here. These will light up in battle. You can see with her passive here, Summer High Jump at the start of battle, she gets them fully charged to begin with. And then when she uses her skill 2, she will use both of the charges, right? So she starts with 2 charges right away, which means you get the fully charged skill immediately. Before attacking, she reduces the target's ice resistance by 35% for 2 attacks. This is absolutely crazy for an attacker skill. 35% resistance reduction on your like already good attacker like AoE skill is really, really solid. Then on top of that, when she has 2 charges, she boosts this attack's penetration by 100 after attacking. So, and after attacking, she removes all charges. So, what is penetration? Penetration is a new stat that so far is only on Ryza, and on JP I believe it's also on Awakened Resna, and that's it. But yeah, it's a completely new stat, and what it does is kind of interesting. So against most enemies, every 100 penetration is going to be about 20% extra damage, right? So on top of her reducing ice resistance by a pretty solid amount, she also gets this 20% damage boost from the 100 penetration. However, when enemies actually have defenses to penetrate, this can give many times more damage. So certain enemies, as you may have noticed, take a lot less damage when like stunned or something, when they're not stunned. So think like Golem and Turtle Floors in Tower, or the recent Crow battle from 14.4. All of these enemies have heavy damage reduction when they're not stunned. penetration penetrates that damage reduction. So Ryza can actually kill enemies like that without them being stunned. That's what this stat is really good for. So it's basically kind of a gimmick stat. It is extra damage at a baseline, but there's a few scenarios where it really, really shines. And the stat doesn't make her must-have. Like, you can just stun those enemies and kill them. But it is fun. It's kind of cathartic in a way to, you know, fight those really annoying enemies that have to be stunned and just blow them away without even caring about their mechanics, right? And Ryza is able to do that with this penetration, so that's what that is. But anyways, this is a really, really good skill 2, and it's basically the best skill 2 we have on any AoE attacker because it just does so much damage, right? Really, really solid. And then her burst is also AoE, and it just has more of that penetration stat, and she also gives herself some skill damage before attacking. So decent burst, but in most cases, unless you're trying to do some funny stuff with penetration, you're not really going to be using the burst because she is a sweeper character, right? She's kind of intended to, you know, go all out with skill 2 and kill all the enemies in one turn with that instead of being sort of like a burst attacker. But you can, of course, you know, kill things with her burst as well. It's quite solid. And her skill 1, you're probably never using this. It's a pretty decent skill 1 because it gives item gauge and gives magic attack, but you're probably never using it. It's mostly about her skill 2. Then her other passive, finishing serve, when the attack target is stunned, boosts skill damage by 50%. In most cases, for new content, you're probably going to be ignoring this. Things just don't really get stunned nowadays. It is what it is. And her leader skill is also the same thing, skill damage when attack target is stunned. You probably won't be using this for her either. And then we also have her gift, which is an ice damage boost. No one cares about this. But yeah, so I mentioned earlier, she's generally a pretty decent, you know, area attacker in the same sort of niche as Izana. However, she requires a specific team to really shine. Now, why is this? For one, ice attackers don't quite have as much of the same support, like specific support that, like, say Izana does. You know, with Izana has like Wilbel and Liddy as these really great like bolt supporters, whereas Ice has like Claudia, right? Ice Claudia, the really old character with no passives, right? Like, yeah, there's a pretty big difference. However, because she is specifically Ryza, she ends up having a really, really, really powerful team, and the team looks like this. It looks kind of silly, right? It's Ryza, and 3 Claudias. Very funny looking team. But basically the point of this team is that with Academy Ryza's leader skill, this entire team gets initiative. Every single unit on this team has initiative. And basically you have 4 pretty solid like debuff supporters and then Ryza. So Ryza ends up being the strongest initiative sweeper in the entire game. If you have specifically this full team, she ends up being really, really, really good, just for general content. Now, obviously, this is not a good team for tournament, and if you don't have enough damage to kill all the enemies in one turn, the team sort of falls apart because it has no defense. But the entire team being initiative, and all of these Claudias and Academy Ryza being really good, like debuff or supporter units, really does make this team pack quite a punch, and it ends up being the strongest initiative team in the game, the strongest sweeper team in the game, just a really, really good all-around team. So I do like, if you want Summer Ryza, she has an absolutely fantastic team with this initiative team. And if you don't really care too much about Roman Tournament, I would recommend going for this team. It's pretty fun. Ryza's a really, really good character for specifically this team, but you do want to make sure you have the entire team, especially Academy Ryza. The team does not work without Academy Ryza, and you really, like, missing any one of the pieces really lowers the damage quite a bit. Obviously, Swimsuit Claudia isn't out yet, but she'll be here in about 3 weeks with Summer Part 3, so you'll want to pull for her as well. So basically, the team can be pretty intensive when it comes to resources and stuff. Having all these units is not the easiest thing in the world. However, importantly, with the 1-year anniversary event, we get more character selectors. We get, in fact, 2 different character selector banners. The first one contains every unit up to Arland, which includes this Claudia, and the second one contains every unit up to Dusk Development Team, which luckily includes both Academy Ryza and Onsen Claudia. So if you don't have these characters right now, you don't even need to spark them. If you're willing to spend a little bit of money and wait a couple months, you will be able to select all 3 of these characters to put together this team. And it is a really, really good team. You will, of course, have to pull for or select Ryza and Claudia, but, you know, these are current units, so you do have that chance, especially if you get lucky on getting them with tickets. So, yeah, that is what there is to say about Ryza. Even without the full initiative team, she'll still be a solid sweeper, but in my opinion, if you already have a good Izana team, she's not really worth pulling for unless you're going to put together the full team like this, right? If you're not really going to put together this team, if you don't have the characters, if it doesn't sound interesting to you, she's not really worth pulling for over Izana. She is technically for a sweeper team, which a sweeper team is a team that, you know, kills everything in one turn. She is going to be a better, like, pure sweeper unit than Izana, but she requires different units to support her, right? So, yeah. Anyways, all that is to say, Ryza initiative setup is very, very good if you get specifically this team. If you're not going for specifically this team and you already have Izana, don't really bother. But she is very, very, very good when you have this team, so that's very cool. And one more thing I wanted to talk about in regards to the summer banners. So right now it's part 1. And I'm sure all of you are wondering, like, where should you spend your gems for summer? Because there's so many units and they're all pretty decent. Ryza Initiative is obviously one choice. However, during summer part 4, we get this memoria, and the banner only has memoria on it. So that's kind of awkward. However, it's actually a good thing. This is the best memoria in the game, which is 4 attackers, 100% critical damage at rank 5, with 36% magic attack and 1% speed. This is the best attacker memoria stat spread with the best attacker memoria effect, and it's completely generic. You can put it on any attacker, and this comes in part 4. So I highly recommend saving your gems specifically for this memoria no matter what. For any account in the game, it's going to increase your account power dramatically, and you only really need 1 copy, because if you have memory crystals, you can throw memory crystals into it, get it up to rank 5. If you haven't been hoarding memory crystals, then you can start now. If you have been hoarding memory crystals, then you can get it to rank 5 immediately while only pulling 1 copy. And the fact that this is on its own banner means that it's 1.5% pickup rate because it's not sharing the banner with anything else, compared to focusing a unit, which is only 1% rate. This memoria being alone means it's 1.5%, so it's 1 in 70 pulls, which is much better than the standard 1 in 100. So getting this memoria for most accounts is going to be the most efficient use of your gems, specifically for team power, because it can go on literally any attacker and be really, really, really strong. And then, of course, it doesn't even need to be said, if you want to compete in Roman tournament at like a top 50 or top 100 level, this memoria is basically completely mandatory. So there is that as well. And just like, yeah, it's more efficient to pull this memoria for team power than anything else. And you don't really want to spark it because memoria sparks are 200 medals, whereas characters are 150. So this is what I will be saving all my gems for. I will of course be buying tickets for the various banners leading up to this, but all of my actual gems are going to go into this banner on Global. And so I know it's really tempting to pull a bunch now with all of your free gems, but if you don't have much money to spend on the game, I highly recommend waiting till part 4. Now, I do understand that pulling for a memoria is not super exciting like pulling for characters is, so if you just personally cannot justify pulling for just a memoria, you do you, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do, but it is incredibly OP. It probably won't be power crapped anytime soon, and yeah, it's just absolutely worth having. So, you know, it is what it is. I will leave that up to all of you. But yeah, what else do we have to go over? The recipes. So we have the summer recipes here for part 1. We have the Resna recipes and the Ryza recipes. For Resna, the umbrella is just stun damage for bolt breakers. If you really think you can get enough stun damage to stun things, you can invest in stun damage on her. Otherwise, it's really hard to get enough stun damage for her stun damage to be relevant. In Bolt Tower, this changes a little bit. Like if you're making gear for Bolt Tower, stun damage is going to be relevant there, so Resna will be quite solid there with a stun damage setup. But in most cases, I would just go for, you know, scaling her debuffs. The swimsuit boosts the potency of negative effects inflicted by 15%. This is of course going to be very good as it's her, you know, it scales her debuffs, very nice armor. And the hat is boost the potency of buff effects given by 15% for bolt breakers. This doesn't really matter on Resna specifically. It matters if you're actually stunning things with her burst because she has this magic attack buffs, but if you're not stunning anything, this doesn't matter. You're probably better off rolling something else for her. So yeah, this is kind of whatever, right? And then we have the Ryza gear. So first up, we have the fishing rod. Boost skill damage by 17% when attacking a weakness. This is actually pretty decent on Ryza, especially for Ryza Initiative, because what ends up happening with that team is you have kind of an excess of critical damage on that team, but you have a very low amount of skill damage. So skill damage actually ends up being a better stat than crit damage, and she creates her own weaknesses, so with the minus 35% ice resist, so the skill damage when attacked, so like the weakness condition isn't a bad thing. So the fishing rod is actually quite good on Summer Ryza, but obviously the ice book from Tower is good as well. I think for most setups the fishing rod is better. However, there's also certain setups where you might need to use the turret on her for crit chance, so keep that in mind when choosing a weapon, especially if you go for the Summer Memoria that we just talked about with the 100% crit damage, and you have like full crit damage traits on her. Like a book is probably not giving as much damage as this, because the team is just that low on skill damage. So, you know, keep all that in mind. And then we have the Sunshine Swimsuit, which after a party member uses a battle item, boosts on skill damage by 24% for 1 turn. This is pretty dang good. 24% skill damage is a lot, and Ryza will be using, you know, items. Of course, you only get it once. However, you probably already have like silver thread armor with attacker traits, so I would say this is pretty low priority, and I don't even know if it's often better than silver thread armor. However, I will say that for Ryza Initiative specifically, silver thread armor does end up being a little bit worse because that team is very debuff heavy, so it doesn't have as many buffs for silver thread to scale. So this might actually be better for that specific team, but silver thread's going to be good enough for other armor options you already have, right? So this is still, of course, very good for Ryza. 24% skill damage on a team that's lacking skill damage in general is very good. Then we have the sandals, which once again, skill damage for attacks that target all enemies by 16%. There's not much to say about this. The accessory slot is not very competitive. This is very, very, very good, as long as it keeps her speed low enough, because you do want her to go last, and there are some slow characters on that team. So, but yeah, the sandals, pretty dang good for Ryza. So all of Ryza's gear is quite good. It's just there's also other options in each slot. If you already have other gear in these slots, I would probably focus the sandals first. The sandals are quite strong, so yeah, pretty good recipes. I suppose I can also go over the new traits, and then we will get on to the pulls, because I believe that is all that we have left, so exciting. For the new traits, I can go over the ultra rare weapons as well. So if we go to the exchange here, we can see these fancy, if it ever loads, we can see these fancy pink rarity items. So starting with this event, in a lot of events, we are going to get ultra rare rarity equipment. It's always weapons. They come with VV traits and special effects, so they're kind of interesting. They're usually not that good though. So this is the one for Resna. While equipped to a breaker with Bolt Affinity, boosts stun damage by 14%, boosts all seasonal allies' magic attack by 5%, so that's pretty cool effect. It has stun damage up when attacking a weakness, and bolt resistance down 30%, so in most cases you will probably use this on Resna instead of making something for her. Like, this one is one of the better ones if you're actually using Bolt Resna, because this is the trait you want on her, enhanced resistance down bolt, and it just comes with the free stun damage trait as well. So this item's going to end up being pretty good on Resna. There's just better options if you're ignoring stun damage completely, but it's still a really, really good weapon. It has the traits you want, more or less, so really good for Resna specifically. And if your attacker does happen to be seasonal, which, like I said before, that's basically going to be Swim Val when she comes out in the next banner. It has a really nice bonus for that, so that's pretty cool. And then we have the other one, the Water God Spear, which is made for Ryza, and this one's a lot worse. It does give skill damage for ice attackers, and it will also give Kirkin Island allies 5% magic attack. However, the traits are quite bad. It does have skill power up V, which is pretty nice, but the other one is enhanced ice resistance down, and while it does scale the ice resistance debuff from her skill 2, that's just going to be worse than having like a critical damage V trait here. So this weapon ends up being quite bad because of that. Just because she has that debuff doesn't mean the trait's good enough. It's really not. Like, this trait basically translates to, I think it's 10.5% extra ice resistance down per copy, which just isn't good enough when you compare it to like 60% crit damage, right? So unfortunately, because of the traits, this weapon is not particularly good, but if you have nothing better, or if you're new to the game and have Ryza, it's a really good option to start with, right? Like, absolutely fantastic as a starter weapon. It just does not, it is not her best in slot, so, but yeah, that's pretty cool. And I guess we already went over the new traits, so there's not really much to go over. They do come on materials from the event score battle, so look into those. But yeah, that's about it for all that stuff. We can finally get to the pulls. First up for the pulls, we have a lot of Atelier Fest tickets that we got in the mail, so I'll just go through these real quick. I don't really want to go to through the animations. These aren't really very exciting. The only thing that I could pull out of this that I actually care about is time to study, so, you know, it's unlikely to show up, but we'll just go through these really, really quick and probably get a bunch of nothing. Or maybe we'll get a Ryza. You know, do a little bit of trolling. Wow, 2 characters! Low G and Needy. But since these are Atelier Fest tickets, of course we already have both of them. But the pieces from that, pretty nice. Not gonna complain about pieces from these. That's the other thing that's good, of course, other than time to study, but time to study is the real winner if we pull that. And an Aisha, and a lot of Eskos to end it off. Honestly, not bad for Fest ticket pulls, but no memoria. Sad. Alright, so now we have the summer banner tickets. And I am going to focus Ryza. Personally, I don't have her on JP, so I haven't been able to do the whole like Ryza initiative setup myself, which is also why I don't really have a guide for it. If I do get her, I will be able to make a guide for it when Claudia comes out. But we'll see. I'm not going to force it or anything, but it would be very, very nice to get her and be able to use that team on Global. Yeah, we'll see. God, the banner is so loud. Alright, on to the tickets. And this is looking pretty dang bad. No inks to speak of. Of course, it doesn't mean it's completely doomed, but it means it probably is. yeah, I'm not seeing any signs of anything, so at this point that usually means it's gonna be nothing. Which, while unfortunate, is expected. I really would love to get Ryza though. We do have 10 more tickets in a few days from the login bonuses, so maybe I will get her then, but probably not. And yeah, this pull it's a whole lot of nothing. Alright, on to the next set of tickets. Maybe this one will be better. We did get the winks. Doesn't mean anything, but there's a chance. Alright. Not seeing much. Yeah, once again, probably nothing. It could turn into something, but probably not. Yep, looks like nothing again. Unfortunate. We did get a memoria. I believe that is the stab damage memoria. Yeah, stab damage. Alright. Pulls were not lucky this time. It is what it is. Hopefully the next set of tickets is good. Or hopefully I get the memoria earlier so I can actually pull with gems for Ryza. Although I still probably won't. But, yeah. God. These videos are so crazy. But yeah, that'll be it for this one. I wish you all good luck on your summer pulls. I know this video went on for a long time, but there's just so much in this event, and I hope you all enjoy it and enjoy the summer story and everything like that. I will see you all for part 2. Bye-bye.